Good morning, Grace Bible Church, Grace Bible Kids. I'm excited to bring you episode 3 of the adventures of Sing Sue. So let's get right into it. Long ago, far away, in a place called China, lived a little girl off a little stream that was upstream of the South China Sea. Was this little girl named Sing Sue. And Sing Sue, if you remember with me, became a Christian. She heard the gospel of Jesus Christ and she believed. And she was going to see the one who preached the gospel and now was in jail for it, John, and he was telling her about Jesus, and she'd got the Bible. And at the jail, she saw another little girl named Ling Lang, who also believed. And Sing Sue and Ling Lang were the first two Christians in this village. And so Sing Sue had her own Bible that John had given her, that was in his bag, and he told her where to find it, and she'd been hiding it under her mattress. And she'd been pulling it out and reading. And that morning before school, she didn't have as much time to read as she did the nights before, but she opened it up to John chapter 1, as that the prisoner John had told her to. And she read, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. All things were made through him, and without him was not anything made that was made. And in him was life, and the life was the light of men, and the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it." And she read that, and she stopped, and she was thinking about it. In him was life, and the life was the light of man. And she was thinking, and she was pondering in her mind, what does it mean that in him is life, and his life was the light of man? And then she remembered when she heard about Jesus' life, when John had shared the good news, the gospel with her. All of a sudden, it was like a light came on inside of her, and she could see God through Jesus, and she could see that he was good, and she knew it was true. But when she would go back this 2 times that she had done to the jail, she would see John getting beat up or hear it, and she would be so sad that John was getting beat up. But then she remembered that verse 5 that she had just read, that the light shines in the darkness. And she thought, how much of a light has John been? And this good news been to her? And in the midst of darkness, because they put him in jail and they were trying to cover up this light. But in there trying to cover up the light that was in John, she could see it as pure and beautiful, and that he cared about them more than he cared about himself, and he cared about God more than he cared about himself. And she was thinking about this, and she looked at the clock and could not believe how much time she passed. She'd been thinking about that for almost an hour. She had to get ready and race off to school, and she got to school, and she was in class, and she was thinking about Jesus and that he was this light. She was thanking God that she got to see the light, and she got to see the life of Jesus, and that how this light has shined in her heart. And then she just had this feeling that I want others to know Jesus also. And she started thinking about this and praying about this. In her heart, she thought, oh, but I can't tell anybody about Jesus because I'll get in trouble. She didn't know what to do with that, because she certainly would get in trouble. If she told someone and they told on her, she would get in trouble, and her parents might get in trouble also. And maybe they would find her Bible. And she didn't know if they would put a 9-year-old in jail, but it was a scary thought. But she wanted to be faithful to God. And if God wanted her to tell somebody, she wanted to. She wanted to be like John, who was willing to get in trouble so that people might believe in Jesus. Just then, a boy walked into class late. He was almost twice the size of everybody else in the class. And his name was Chuchat. And Chuchat, he struggled with school. He had a really hard time learning. And he was always thinking that other people were making fun of him, even when they weren't. And he was getting in fights almost every day in school. And he would say mean things to Sing Sue all the time. Because Sing Sue got really good grades. She did really well in school. And Chuchat didn't. And so he was kind of insecure. And so he would make fun of Sing Sue. But when Sing Sue saw him that day, she just saw sadness on his face. And all of a sudden, there was something inside her that said, I want Chuchat to have the light that I have. I want him to see the life of Jesus, this gospel, this good news, and have the joy that I have. And she, sitting in her desk, she prayed quietly to herself that Chuchat would see the light. And so that day out at recess, Chuchat came over to bully Sing Sue. And he came and kind of just pushed her off to the side and called her stupid. Which really normally would hurt Sing Sue's feelings really bad. But this time it didn't hurt her feelings so bad. And instead of feeling hurt, she felt sorry for Chuchat, because she knew that he was in darkness. But she also knew that his darkness could not overcome her light. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. So she, rather than being hurt and crying, it's like she would sometimes, she said, Chuchat? He turned around and said, what? And she said, I'm sorry if I've done anything that made you angry. And he just looked at her and confused. He said, what do you mean? And she said, well, you pushed me, and so if I've ever done anything mean to you, I'm sorry about it. And he was confused because he didn't even know why he pushed Sing Sue. He didn't even know why he did what he did. And he said, why are you even talking to me? And she said, because I would like to be your friend. And Chuchat got really upset by this. You want to be my friend? And she said, yes, Chuchat, I would like to be your friend. And he went back up to her and he pushed her again and said, I don't like how you're talking to me right now. And Sing Sue said, I still want to be your friend. And he said, why? And Sing Sue said, because I think you're valuable. And now he looked really confused. I'm valuable? And she said, yep, I think you're valuable. Kind of smiled and walked away. And Sing Sue was mad and he was confused. But he also thought, something's happened to Sing Sue. She's different now. And even though he was being mean to her, he couldn't make her sad. And he was so confused by that, because he could always make her cry. He could always make Sing Sue feel bad. But this time, there was a sparkle to her, a light to her. And he couldn't put it out. And Sing Sue walked away and prayed, God, please help Chuchat to know that I'm not finding a way to pick on him, but that I really care about him. And God, I read in that first book in your word that we were created in your image, so I know Chuchat has value. And I let him see the light. Let him see that Jesus is good. And so the rest of the day, that's what she was thinking about. And she'd look over and Chuchat would be looking at her like, what's your problem? And she'd look at him and smile and wave. And he was so confused by that. After school, though, Sing Sue and Ling Ling both had this plan. And after that bell rang, they went running off as fast as they could to get to that place where they would sneak into the trees. And they got there and they looked around and darted into the trees. And they were coming through the trees, jumping over the branches, really running dangerously fast through the jungle. But they couldn't help it. They were so excited. And they came up to that jail. And as they came close to the jail, they didn't hear John getting beat up this time. They heard a man yelling at John, "Why are you so nice to me? I beat you up every day." And they heard John say, "Because I love you and I care about you and I came here for you." And they heard John get smacked again. And John said, "Father, forgive him, for he knows not what he does." And this prison guard, who was so angry with John, said, "Whatever, I'll be back to punish you again tomorrow." And walked out the door and slammed the door. And Sing Sue and Ling Ling came running up to the bars and asked him, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And John came to the bars and little opening in the jail, and he said, "Yeah, I'm okay. I can handle that." And Sing Sue said, "I know why you're okay." And John said, "What do you mean?" And she said, "I know why, that even though that man beats you up, you're still okay." And John was kind of confused, and he said, "Well, why is that, Sing Sue?" And Sing Sue said, "Because you had the light of Jesus in you. And your light shines in the darkness, and no matter how much he beats you up, that darkness won't overcome the light." And John just smiled and looked up to the sky, which was a jail cell, so he couldn't really look at the sky, but he just looked up and kind of smiled and shook his head. And he said, "So I see that you've been reading the book of John." And she said, "Yeah, but I only got 5 verses in. I just couldn't stop thinking about it." And John said, "Well, that is wonderful." And Sing Sue said, "So I've got a question for you." And he said, "What's that?" And she said, "Well, I feel like this light that's in me, I should share it. But my parents told me to never talk about Jesus to anybody. And talked about how much trouble I would get into. And that, I don't know, maybe I could go to jail too. But I feel if I don't tell somebody, I'm going to burst. And I feel like God wants me to. Am I supposed to tell people about Jesus?" And John said, "Now, Sing Sue, it is true that you could get in a lot of trouble telling people about Jesus. And the last thing I want is for you to find yourself in jail. I want you to be on the outside of jail, learning about Jesus, and be praying. Pray and pray and pray. And maybe God will give you some insight in who you should tell about Jesus." And Sing Sue said, I think that might have already happened. And John said, it did? And she said, yeah, there's this boy, Chuchat. He's a big boy in my class, and he's always bullying me, and he's always picking on me. And when he came and picked on me today, all I could feel was love for him and sadness, because I think he does this stuff because he's sad. And so I told him I think he's got value. I told him I care about him, and it just made him even more mad. But I think God wants me to tell Chuchat about Jesus. And John thought about that. He thought, oh, I don't want her to get in trouble. I don't want her to get caught. I don't want her to have the Bible stolen from her. I don't want them to find it. I don't want. And he said, well, let me pray for a minute. He stopped and he prayed. He said, all right, Ling Ling. All right, Sing Su. Here's what I want you to do. Keep loving Chuchat the best you can. Keep praying for him. And look for God to crack open the door to Chuchat's heart. And be looking for that opportunity when it's like Chuchat is wanting you to tell him the good news. And be patient and be praying that God would open that door that you could speak to Chuchat. You know, it's not like that for us here in the United States. We can go and we can tell anybody about Jesus and not get in trouble for it. But in China, it was different. And so this was something that Sing Su had to be really careful about. But the weird thing was, she wasn't that afraid that she would get in trouble. She was more afraid that Sing Su, or that Chuchat wouldn't get to hear the good news. And so she